I decided to send my in-laws off to an old age retirement home. Yeah, it might sound a little rough because we could have kept them at our house, but the thing is, they went against my decision and ultimately broke my trust. Well, when I told the news to my husband, he's saying I overstepped and should not have ever told his family to move away. Let me go back to the beginning and walk you guys through this wild ride. Okay, for context, my husband and I got married in 2011. We have a 10-year-old daughter who is at an age where she's becoming more aware of the world around her, and a 6-year-old son. Things at home were going well for us until the COVID pandemic hit. My husband used to run a diamond business, but we lost everything during the pandemic, which caused him great depression and acute stress, and had to step up the breadwinner of our family to be me. Although my husband's business had taken a hit, it was still enough to sustain us. As for me, my job as a lawyer gave me a steady income. My husband and I have a fairly solid relationship, except for every time his parents come into the picture. They're a close-knit family and have always been spending every single weekend together, traveling together, running errands together, etc. He often invites his parents out with us on date nights and parties on weekends. I don't really like my in-laws that much, to be honest. They tend to judge people a lot and will outright say something if they don't like it. For example, commenting on everything from my car needing to be washed to not liking my new hair color. Especially my mother-in-law, she's pure evil. And she has never been fond of our children. They've always been controlling, and it's caused so much friction between us. They've been lots of little things over the years that have shown how little they care about us. Especially me. I generally just try to keep my in-laws at a distance, because I respect that they're my husband's parents and he loves them. To clarify, he has had it out with them many times defending me. So here's where the issue starts. Around October of last year, I come home from work to find boxes and bags in the living room, and saw my in-laws talking with my husband. My husband pulled me aside and told me that his parents had spent all their money on their daughter, which is my husband's sister, who was entitled to receive their financial support. Now they're left with nothing and had nowhere else to go, as they are too old to go to work. So my husband decided to take them in. I was shocked, as there's obviously a huge Pandora's box of problems waiting if I let them in, but figured that it's not worth fighting over, especially when they're already here, so I just let it slide. We let them stay with us in our home 3-bedroom, and we gave them an allowance to help with expenses, and they moved in with us. It wasn't a small amount, but we wanted to help them out in their time of need, and we also wanted to make sure they were comfortable living with us. The allowance covered their basic expenses, such as meals, bills, and any other necessities they needed. We helped them with their medical bills and let them use our car. We also thought that they needed more than just financial support, and we had to find ways to make them feel like they're part of our family. We made sure to involve them in family activities and include them in decision-making, and provide them with emotional support even, something they didn't have from their daughter. Having them live with us was not making things any easier. But I managed at first, but after being quiet for only 6 months, my in-laws started criticizing me openly for everything. They hated that I was a lawyer, didn't respect my fashion sense at all, and were even raging about my cooking. They were always complaining about something, and they had a way of making feel like I wasn't doing enough for them. Well, they also treat our home like it's their own, since they've been putting away some old decoration on the excuse that it looks too tacky, before putting up their own taste of decor. If I listed every passive-aggressive thing they said or did to us and the kids during their stay, it would make this post so infinitely long. Soon I started noticing something, though, that they seemed a bit off lately, but I figured it was just being in their own heads or something. That is, until I freaking found something this weekend that I never expected at my doorstep. A paternity test result. But not just any paternity test result. Mind you this. A paternity test that was performed on my own children, without our consent, and oh boy, that was the final straw for me. Not only did my in-laws humiliate me for months and then order a paternity test, but they also didn't even have the decency to inform us after taking the test, or at least after they literally sent over the report to me. Didn't they know the level of betrayal that their own son and daughter-in-law must have felt? To say that I felt betrayed is an understatement. We had always provided them with financial support and a place to stay. And this is how they're going to repay us? By stealing our genetic materials? Going behind my and my partner's back and doing a DNA test, huh? To be honest, it actually wasn't just the paternity test or the act of stealing itself, but the fact that they've been questioning the paternity of our children. How could they even think that our kids aren't ours? Normally, I'd let my husband handle issues like this, but he was in another city due to some work. I was speechless for a moment, and before I blew up from anger, I confronted them about these things. But they claimed that their motives were good when they felt that our son looks nothing like me, and that they want only the best for us and for our children. This goody-goody attitude was what pushed me. Even if they didn't apologize, I wouldn't have bothered. But when they started trying to justify their racist fears, I knew that I had to take drastic action to protect my family, even if it was a very difficult decision. I felt like I had no choice but to immediately cut off their allowance and send them packing. It was time I stopped biting my tongue and finally stand up for myself. So I reluctantly did. And we had the mother of all arguments. I asked them to better leave our home before I lose whatever respect I have left for them. I let her know what I thought of her and the type of mother she is to her son. It's obvious that they did not go over well, but I said some very harsh things. True, yeah, but harsh. Well, I think it was well deserved, but I'm wondering if I shouldn't have just, bit my tongue. Like I've been for years trying to keep the peace, because right after I talked, my mother-in-law's exact words were this: "I can't have my boy raising kids that aren't his." Well, this really upset me, but I kept my cool, and I've had enough of their behavior, and it was time for them to go. They seemed taken aback by my boldness, but I wasn't going to back down. They even demanded that they needed the fine china that's displayed in the dining room for selling it, because they don't have any money. Those fine china are my family heirlooms that my grandmother got from her mother, and I treasure them, so obviously I said, no. My father-in-law, he's even worse. He said a few choice words, which angered me more. I didn't even hear the rest because I went to my room and immediately called the police. They arrived after an hour and finally took charge of the situation since nobody else could. As soon as they walked in, my in-laws tried to put on a show of innocence, but I wasn't having it. I explained to the cops what happened, and they quickly saw through my in-laws' lies. My father-in-law continued to argue with the police, but they didn't budge. They informed my in-laws that they were no longer welcome in our home, and that they had to leave immediately. So they escorted my in-laws and their belongings out of our home, and back to the old age house they were previously residing in, which is in the same city, by the way. Although they hated it there, I couldn't bring myself to even care. As I watched my in-laws being escorted out of our home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. My husband has no idea of what his parents have done, and I didn't tell him about the whole DNA test and thing, not until after his return in 2 days. Looking at his face, I knew that it broke his heart. I know how much he tried to win his parents' approval, and what they did was like a slap across the face. I felt very bad. I also told him that I asked them to leave the house. Well, he wanted to immediately visit them at the old age home, so we went there. At that point, my in-laws absolutely start bawling, crying their eyes out. They were obviously trying to manipulate him. I had seen it happen before, and I knew that they were experts at playing the victim and using emotional tactics to get whatever they wanted. I took a deep breath. I tried to explain to my husband why he had taken a firm stance against his parents and why we have to do it. I reminded him of the violation of our privacy and that we could not bring ourselves to trust them again for what they've done this time. But still, my husband seemed torn. He still loves them, he says, and wants to maintain a relationship with them and didn't want to hurt them. But he also loved our children and didn't want to put them at risk. Well, yeah, you could say it was a difficult position to be in. I know, and I could see the weight of it all bearing down on him. I couldn't help but feel guilty for putting my husband into this position. But then I thought of our children and how they deserve to have their privacy respected. I'm also tired of having to deal with the stress from my high-end job and at home. And I knew that I've made the right decision even if it was a difficult one. After the visit, he's now mad at me, mad that I made an extreme decision. I can understand why my husband would feel conflicted, but I just can't overlook the fact that his parents violated our trust in such a personal way. He thought I was overreacting and didn't even give them the time to pack their stuff and leave, but I felt like it was the only way to protect our family's dignity. I mean, I get it. It's his parents, but at the same time, I feel like he's not seeing things from my perspective. He's discussed the issues with his sister that night, and I don't know the details. I don't really know what to think about that. I just hope she doesn't take their side, because if she does, it's only going to cause more problems for our family. If she takes their side, it could lead to an absolute gigantic rift caught between her and my husband, as well as between our families, and I just want this situation to be resolved as peacefully as possible, without any more drama to unfold. But I know that might be wishful thinking at this point. Now they all, including my husband, are upset with me. Yeah, all these just make me feel like I'm the bad guy. I couldn't shake that feeling of guilt and doubt. Was I overreacting as my husband feels? These thoughts haunt me, and I couldn't help but second-guess myself. I mean, on one hand, I know that what they did was absolutely unforgivable and horrible. I couldn't just let it slide and pretend everything was hunky-dory. But on the other hand, I mean, yeah, they're still family, and I couldn't help but feel like I've betrayed my husband by severing ties with his own parents. The guilt was eating me up inside, and I wonder if there was a better way to handle the situation. Was it really necessary to involve the police? The worst part is that I don't even know how to move forward from this. What's more, the issue even caused a rift between me and my husband. I'm devastated. Please, any support and advice in the comment section is so helpful. Update number 1. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you to everyone who sent me kind words and encouragement, even the private messages. You have no idea how much it means to me right now. Also, recently someone commented on my OG post asking what happened with my husband, and a few even suggested marriage counseling. We've not been to marriage counseling since before we got married. I've been begging him to go, but he's being very cagey, keeps canceling or avoiding it. I welcome marriage counseling recommendations. He says he needs space to process and doesn't know if he'll be able to forgive me. I didn't realize what the fallout from my decision will be for his family in the long run. But I do know that I couldn't stand by and let my in-laws treat us like that. Still, I've apologized in, well, every single way that I know how to. At this point, I just have to give him the space he wants and hope he calms down. It would be horrible for us to throw away what we built. I hope that he understands why I did what I did. The good part is, he seems to be open to seeking couples counseling. It gives me some hope that we can work past this. Some of you suggested taking legal action against my in-laws for stealing our genetic material and doing the DNA test without our consent on our children. Being a top lawyer, I'll definitely win the case, and my in-laws will have to pay a very hefty fine for their actions, but I don't want that. My relationship with my in-laws is all but shattered, and I'm not sure it'll ever be repaired. It'll cost a lot to pay for another house since we're already paying a huge rent for our current home, so I offered to change to a more comfortable old age home. But my in-laws simply refused. Today, I got a grocery subscription to be sent to their old age home every single week. That would be enough to cook various meals. Not sure what the reaction will be. My husband told me that they tried to contact their daughter, just for help. But she's been ignoring their calls as she knows what they've done to her brother. Anyways, that's where things stand for now. I'll keep you guys updated if anything changes. Thanks again for your time. Update number 2. Well, guys, I'm sorry. This is not the happiest update, but not the worst either. It's also incomplete, but enough people have asked me for an update and I figured I owed you guys. So, 6 days ago, my daughter came up to me and asked me what was happening with her grandparents. Seemed like she had overheard the entire argument. I sat her down and explained the situation as best as I could. I told her that her grandparents have done something very wrong, and that we cannot let them stay with us anymore. She didn't fully understand the situation, but I could tell that she was upset and confused. My son was still far too young to understand what was happening, so he continued with his Call of Duty games peacefully. In the following days, my daughter's behavior changed. She was quieter than usual and seemed to be lost in thought. She also started to act out and was getting in trouble at school. I knew that something was bothering her, but I didn't know how to approach the topic. It wasn't until she came to me one day and asked if we were going to get a divorce that I realized how much the situation had affected her. See, I was shocked and told her that her father and I loved each other very much, and that we were not going to get a divorce. I then asked her why, and she told me that she's heard our grandparents talking about how the situation would definitely ruin the marriage. They've been filling her head with nonsense lies and had been trying to turn her against us. I was steaming, but I didn't want to make the situation worse by confronting them again, and my daughter eventually started to open up about how she was feeling. We had long talks about trust, honesty, and even family. I then decided that even if my in-laws apologized, they've overstepped a gigantic, huge boundary, and I would never be able to trust them with my children again. And if that were to happen, it's definitely a series of conversations first. The kids' paternity test was low-hanging fruits of what would have gotten the most dramatic results. But now they don't have that card anymore, and I think they're desperate to find something new. I have a feeling that they'll be back in a month with all sorts of cover-ups and platitudes. They will even be more hell-bent on making my life miserable by kicking them out. A few days later, update number 3. Messy. A messy update I have for you, but I'll keep it short and sweet. After listening to the comments and talking to my husband, he's finally agreed to meet up earlier today. Though a few people were telling me to break up with him, we talked over coffee for a few hours, and what most of you suggested was true. His real reason for not wanting to kick them out of the house is that he felt guilty, and also responsible for their situation. Also, based on some of the advice I'm receiving, I see a lot of you are concerned that I'm not going to be able to handle his toxic parents again. You don't have to worry. We've started going for family counseling, and my husband began to see things from my perspective and realized that his parents had to be distanced. I even showed him some of this thread comments, especially one that said, "Hey, you dodged a massive disapproving bullet by cutting them out." He smiled immediately. It just looked like he was processing everything, and I can understand that it took him a couple of weeks. We're both now dealing with the emotional fallout of putting up with the garbage. Also, he told me that he's planned a family dinner in a few weeks in order to sort this problem once and for all. I don't know how it's gonna go, but I think I needed this. I need some sort of closure. But at the same time, I'm afraid to confront his parents all over again and address the issues that's caused the tension in our relationship in the first place. I told the same to my husband. He assured me that if things still don't work out, we will decide to move forward as a family without the presence of his toxic parents. Looking back on everything, I realized that sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones. Cutting off my in-laws was not easy, but I knew that I had to show our children that we value ourselves and our families enough to stand up against this behavior, even if it comes from family members, and that's exactly what I did. I also feel happy that my husband came out of his guilt and understood me. We now have each other, and that's enough. As we wait for the dinner date, I'll try to focus on the present and move forward as a family. Update number 4, final update posted by OP. Hey guys, so last month I've made an update about how I got back together with my husband. Yay. And about the family dinner. I did end up joining the conversation, and I'm glad. I'm glad that my husband and my in-laws have now arrived at a common ground. Ish. Let me tell you what happened. Things really blew up after my last update. There were multiple conversations between my husband and both his sister and their parents. It did not go well at first when they tried to justify their actions all over again. But I wasn't willing to let them off the hook that easily. I reminded them that what they did was, well, a clear violation of our trust. Right after that, my husband got really mad at his parents and said, "Do you both think that a secret paternity test is not a big deal? Aren't you realizing that you've committed a crime? A crime by ordering a DNA test without the parents' permission. You have no right to question the paternity of our children, Mom and Dad." I don't know why, but him telling them it's wrong has worked. They both began to apologize, and they finally acknowledged that they were wrong to take advantage of our hospitality. What took them so long is the only question I'm wondering. Well, despite the apology, I still feel hurt by their actions. By the way, they never apologized for humiliating me every single day, but I was willing to make the most of the situation and work on rebuilding our relationship. Anyways, our family is finally able to move past this difficult chapter in our life. We're slowly starting to recover from the setback. My husband's even planning to restart his business in the diamond company, and I continue to work hard as a lawyer. We also make sure to spend quality time with our children. We started doing more family activities like movie nights and game nights, and we continue to have open and honest communication with our kids about what happened with their grandparents. Still, we try to keep them shielded from the tension between us and my in-laws, but it's not always easy. Yesterday, we discussed the possibility of moving to a new city just to start fresh. But we haven't made any concrete plans yet. Nothing set in stone. For now, we take things one day at a time and hope that things will get better. There isn't much else to say, other than thank you. You guys have given us such an enormous amount of love and support. People were sending dozens of heartfelt messages. I even had to turn my phone off because of all the notifications chiming in. What a distraction to work. I wanted to let you all know your kind words meant so much to me. Even if I felt a little too awkward to respond to most of the messages, it's a strange and difficult time all around for us and for our children. But we'll try to navigate it as best as we can. That's all, I suppose. Thank you for your time. Okay, so this question has to make me ask you this. What do you think about the in-laws going behind OP's family's back and doing these tests to the young children without any consent from the family? I would love to hear from you guys about what exactly you would do in this scenario. I know it's a really weird one, but maybe one of you viewers out there have been through something similar, where maybe an in-law or a parent went against your decision with something to do with your children. Go ahead and post your best stories that you have in the comment section down below. If you're new to the channel, I post stories every single day, along the same type of topics of what we covered today. If that sounds like something you're into, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one. Have an amazing day. So long.